Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Camera. Here we are with episode 116 of Behind the Camera. And I know it's been a few weeks. It has been 2.5 weeks since our last release, and I can only apologize for the delay. My wife and I, we recently moved house, and there was some complications with our internet provider, but we have got all of that sorted and we are back, and there is a lot to come in the near future. But before we get into today's show, if you would like to follow Behind the Camera across social media, you can find my link tree in the description, which will take you to Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, and also has the link to where you can buy my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. This is available in both paperback and ebook and is free to read if you have Kindle Unlimited. If you would also like to see more of the behind the scenes side of the podcast, you can also support the show on Patreon. For £3 a month, you'll get access to extra content, including a Patreon exclusive series, your name added to the wall of patrons at the end of every episode of Behind the Camera, and much more. But now, getting into today's conversation. Today, we welcome author and voice actor Aaron Ryan to Behind the Camera. Aaron has published over 50 books over the course of his writing career, some of which have been adapted for screen. We talk about Aaron's process in writing, his approach to storytelling in both his books and voiceover work, and much more. I really hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So now, here's the interview. Aaron, welcome to Behind the Camera podcast. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. How are we doing?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. So, Aaron, you are a author, motivational speaker, voiceover artist. You've written over 41 books. Incredible achievement. Let's talk about this first. So let's go back into your early journey as a writer. What got you into writing and storytelling and led you to becoming an author?
Yeah, well, it's actually 51 now. I published book
51
number
now.
51
Wow.
two days ago. Yeah. It's crazy. It's I'm kind of on a journey propelled by urgency with authoring. So Um, yeah, I think, every time I answer this question, it feels like I have three different origin stories. So, one, I remember reading Lord of the Rings when I was a kid. It just blew my mind. The incredible, robust storytelling, the world building, the stakes, the narrative, the characters, everything. I absolutely fell in love with it. And you can see I'm wearing the ring around my neck. It's not the
Yes.
one ring. I want to show you. I'm still here. Still here. Um, that just blew my mind. The second one, I was in a young authors club when I was about 10. Absolutely forgot about that. It was a newspaper article my mom said to me a few years back. I was like, oh, of course I was an author. Or of course I'm an author. I was in a young authors club. But the real one, though, is second grade. Mrs. Walker, hi, Mrs. Walker, gave everyone an assignment of writing a little, mini novella. And so I was knee deep in reading the novella for E.T. by Alan Dean Foster at the time. So my novella was called The Electric Boy. It was almost a copyright infringement, blatant ripoff of Alan Dean Foster's novelization. But I remember getting it when I was done and holding it in my hand and turning it around and showing people and going, look what I made. And it just showed me, wow, if he can do it, why can't I? And I loved creating a story at that early age.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like I do think it's a very common thing to, you look at someone's work and you're inspired, and even if it is like you say a carbon copy, it's like you still kind of done that in your own little way. You put your own little spin on it, and it's like, even if it's the same, you learning like how to write as you're doing it. You're learning like about particular styles or your style, at least at the
Mhm.
very beginning. Now, of course, it is a very much a sort of learning experience as you go along with these things. But yeah, no, I love that. And so you did just release then your latest novel, your first horror novel, Blood Echoes, which released on the 18th of May. So first of all, congratulations, that's incredible. And
Thank you.
let's talk about this then, just very briefly. So, like, what's the sort of, this is your first horror novel. So you've obviously written different genres before. It's your first horror novel. What inspired you to sort of reach into this genre particularly, as opposed to
Yeah.
other genres you've wrote before?
Well, for those who are joining us with video, you can see behind me there's a smattering of all kinds of book covers. There's a wide variety of genres represented behind me. There's an alien invasion saga, which is horror in its own right. Above me here is Christian dystopian. There's fantasy. There's another paranormal horror, paranormal, kids nonfiction book, sci-fi, and then sci-fi over here. But Blood Echoes, I really wanted to write an overtly horror
Mm,
novel. Alien Invasion is horrific by extension, but I was impacted by Stephen King, um, among many others. J.R.R. Tolkien being the primary influence. Marie Lu, Suzanne Collins, Tom Clancy, Michael Crichton, John Grisham. But I do remember some of the earliest novels that I read were Stephen King,
yeah.
and so I wanted to write a little bit of the tip of the hat to Mr. King. Hello, Stephen. Um, with Blood Echoes, and but a bit of the kind of the paranormal thrown in, like the unfightable enemy antagonist in there. So there's some paranormal aspects to it as well. But I'm pleased. I mean, I'm very critical of anything that I write and put together, and I'm pleased with how this one turned out. I love the twist
Yeah.
that happens at the end. So you don't expect it.
That's incredible. And that's obviously what you want when you're reading that kind of book. And so, how was it writing this? Obviously, very, very seasoned writer, but like, writing different genres, in my personal opinion, I would say would be more challenging because like a lot of writers do kind of stick to one or kind of maybe two neighboring genres. But what was it like writing horror in comparison to like your other ones like Christian dystopian, alien, etc., etc.?
I don't know that there's too much difference. What I really strive to do in any genre that I write, except for the fantasy, the kids' books behind me, is verisimilitude. I really pride myself on verisimilitude. So, for example, in Dissonance, the characters are threading their way through real landmarks, real streets that exist today. So if you Google those on the map, the street view, the aerial view, you would see exactly where my characters threaded their way. I did the same thing with Blood Echoes. It's set in predominantly in and around Airway Heights Correction Center in I think it's to the west of Spokane a little bit,
Mhm.
Washington. So the streets that Tracy Vossler, the primary protagonist, is speeding down, those are right there in Spokane. Those are right there in Airway Heights. Um, the institution itself is, in fact, a modern day active prison. So that setting was there. And I said it during the pandemic, during the COVID pandemic.
Okay.
And everyone remembers that.
Oh
And
yeah.
everyone remembers masks and spraying down their groceries. So there's a healthy dose of realism that I like to
Okay.
incorporate in there.
No, it's fair. And like, so then when it comes to the different genres, is it just a matter of getting the story down first and then, your characters, and really the story kind of dictates the genre then, obviously, yeah?
Well, I'm a total anomaly in this regard. I like to design my cover first.
Okay.
So I get an idea for a story, and the very first thing that I'll do, and sometimes even before I get an idea for the story, one of the very first things I'll do is I'll design a cover for it. The cover is highly motivated for me as a visual
Yeah.
creator because I'm more cinematically inspired than I am literarily. I'll get imagery from a movie or from a picture and strive to create something that matches the intensity or the alluring nature of that cover. And I'm kind of working my way backwards that way. Not everyone works that way, and of course, the cover is going to go through different iterations before the book
Yeah.
finally reaches publishing phase. But yeah, I kind of work a little backwards in that regard, and I like that. It's kind of a signature me thing.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's a nice little quirk, and I think having that kind of visual aspect. I think because when you're writing or even when you're reading, it is a very visual thing. As a reader, you'll put yourself into the story, so it needs to have that kind of detail. But then when you're writing, you have a vision for how your book is going to go, but to add to the sort of realism of it, you also need to be able to picture it yourself. So it makes sense, and it's really interesting. So will that be a case then where you'll have like your first cover done, then you'll kind of that'll kind of sort of give you inspiration, sort of a bit for the story and the visuals, and then after you'll be like, okay, maybe this doesn't, maybe the cover doesn't fit the story, and then kind of it'll all just kind of come together at the end.
Yeah, well, so there's two different styles of writers historically, and one of them is a pantser, and one of them is a planner. So a planner or a plotter is another way of referring to them. They like to fly. Sorry, the plotter likes to do bullet points,
Mm-hmm.
flow charts, index cards. Everything really has to dot all their I's and cross all their T's, and I find that method really constraining. Um, yes, my stories have to have uh, they all have to have forward momentum. They all have to have a directional axis. They have to have a basic plot. But how the primary protagonists get to the end is like your guess is as good as mine. It has to kind of art has to imitate life. If they're going to a wedding, maybe they get a flat tire. You
Mm-hmm.
never know, and that might not have been in the planner's structure for their story. So I kind of wind up where I wind up, and sometimes I'll develop the characters first, and sometimes I'll develop the story first, and just let the chips fall where they may.
I love that. So it's very much a kind of, you know, what anything
Organic.
that could happen likely will happen in a sense.
Yeah, it's very organic, and I
Yeah.
like that because art imitates life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important because realism is important in, even fictional writing because there's that kind of level of human empathy. I think that there needs to be there, for readers reading it and being like, yeah, I can really relate to certain things, whether, and especially with, landmarks and streets. And, I think that's another, because they're massive visual cues for people too. And like, I think it's those little kind of nuances that add to the reading experience. And, but I kind of think sometimes you can tell though when you're reading a book the differences, like you say, with the planners and the ones who just kind of you can kind of tell. And I think the realism is the sort of like defining difference because I think if something's really well planned out, you can kind of tell when you're reading. And other
Yeah,
times, if it's just a bit kind of like not that it sort of digresses, but little sort of things that happen like life, you kind of thinking, okay, yeah, this is very, very believable. I think more believable than it would be if it was overly planned.
yeah. Well, I mean, to each their own, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the style of writing that Stephen King is, or Suzanne Collins, or Tom Clancy, John Grisham. I don't know what they would identify as, but I know for me, one of the greatest quotes I ever heard, and I wish I could remember, I think it was a Russian author, and they said, my goal is to get my protagonist up a tree and throw rocks at them. And I love that because it's, when those rocks are starting to fly and your protagonist is stuck in a tree and he's not going to be able to escape without being pelted by these rocks, how he gets out of that situation reveals a lot to you about that protagonist character.
Yeah.
And so that's great. That's a great way to do character development that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just find that I do my best work when I write it organically and let things happen organically for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course. Like, so then looking at the protagonist versus antagonist, when you're kind of writing well, let's say the overview of the characters, like, do you just sort of put them at the most basic form, like one's good, one's bad, and then as the story develops, then you can kind of help add to the character that way? Or well, I know you
Yeah.
said like it does work both ways sometimes, but is that how you would start with the antagonist or protagonist and antagonist?
Yeah, it's very basic. I mean, I
Yeah.
want to have hair color, eye color, traits, age, blah, blah, blah. But stories that actually reveal an insight into that character need to be well timed. They need to
Mm-hmm.
come on the coattails of like some precipice of a major action or development because you have time to breathe. You have time to absorb what's happening or what has happened, and then really go a little bit more in depth into that character and why they function the way they do and what made them the person they are. It all has it's a balancing act. I don't always get it right, of course, and you have to spin a lot of plates and remember what you're spinning and when. So plate spinning and juggling, that's what an author does, really.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's something that's always fascinated me is like how people can write like a 5, 6, even like up to 900-page book, and the consistency in terms of the characters, their backstory, and the sense to the
Yeah.
plot, especially as the plot's developing, the characters develop with the plot. Like I think it's just a special talent to just keep that everything sort of in line and consistent with one another, because you know, especially when you do put it into a sort of real life aspect, and the fact that life isn't linear,
Hmm.
but just sort of adding that, like I just think it's incredible. And is that just a matter of having to just sort of like, when you get to a certain point, you have to kind of just look back every so often, go like back and forward in terms of what you've written, and
Yes.
you're, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's referencing. And yeah, because if you don't do that, then your character is going to have green eyes in one chapter and then brown eyes in another. So it's something on a surface simple level like that, but it's also remembering those key details of what was formative for that character.
Yeah.
So if they interacted with another character that changed their life, you better remember that character's name. If they mentioned the date, or the range of time where that interaction happened or something happened to them, you need to know when that was and what was happening in the world at that time. It's a macro, zoom out 10,000 feet aerial view to see what's going on in the perimeter of that person's life, not just the person themselves.
Mhm. Of course, of course. And you mentioned before, then you about having talking about the covers. That's the first thing you'll do, and that's sort of helping you, sort of inspiring you visually. That's the kind of creative,
Yeah.
and you've had some of your work adapted to the big screen as well. So, Dissonance Volume 1, The End, Alpha, and Forecast have all been adapted for screen. So, first of all, what was that like? First of all, what were the conversations like in terms of getting them adapted for screen, and then the subsequent final product of that?
Yeah, well, since that time we initially spoke, I think there's been two more. The Slide and the Phoenix
Oh,
Experiment have also been
fantastic!
adapted
Yeah.
for the screen. Yeah, so I'm going the film festival route for every single one of those except for Dissonance. They were adapted by an individual that I co-labored with
Mhm.
through Fiverr, who is a professional screenwriter. So
Oh,
he
wow.
and I partnered together on bringing the books to life that way. And I entered those in the film festival route because you can, as I understand it, you can go one of two routes. One is approaching producers and studios and actors agents, and then the other route is going through the film festival route and entering into contests, some of which, The End has garnered several awards so far, so is Forecast, and that's great. I mean, I'm so
Yeah.
happy to hear that and to receive those accolades. It's also got me on IMDb, which is absolutely crazy. I'm on IMDb. It's like, wow.
Phenomenal.
um, but Dissonance is a special beast. It's 6 books,
Mhm.
number one, and it's very, very commercial friendly. Not, I don't mean the 30-second commercials. It's very commercially friendly as far as a release in a theater
Yeah.
or a streaming episodic treatment. So I was approached by a gentleman in March, I believe, 2024, or his assistant rather, and I'm naturally skeptical. We get about 30 emails every single day. I do, at least, plus, that are all scammers. Some Nigerian boiler room scammer email, and I get about 30 of them, or upwards of 30 every single day. So I'm skeptical, but I look him up, I vet him. He's legitimate. He is a Hollywood fellow. He's on IMDb himself. And I said, okay, well, what's the price? The price was in the range that's commensurate for what it takes to produce a screenplay. He made some changes I didn't really like that weren't necessarily true to two different characters. He
Mhm.
undid them. He control Z'd out of there, and I was very thankful for that. And the most important thing is that he's in the Hollywood system. I am not. I have
Yeah.
no idea who to pitch the books to or how to do it. So not only did he adapt it for the screen and collaborate with me on that and share with me what he had, written. We would get together at intervals and he would show me what he's written to date. But he's also marketing it out there to executives, and that's invaluable to me.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Because I think as the writer yourself, like that's it. There's only kind of so much that you can do. It's an entirely different medium, screen to or novel to screen. And so what was the final product like then in comparison to the book? Like, were you happy with it, or like, is it as good
Yeah.
as, because obviously the vision is always going to be slightly different too because of the, well, I suppose, capabilities of what can be done in terms of shots, in terms of, well, everything that goes into making a film. Like, I mean, I'm also no expert on it too, but like, what was the sort of final product like in your eyes compared to your vision?
It's just a pilot, so it's not the
Mm-hmm.
entire book of
Okay.
the green one up here, Volume One Reality. So it does not represent the entire book. However, the goal is to get it into a streaming episodic treatment rather
Okay.
than, one book is in the theater and then, we do the next one and then we do the next one and next one and all that stuff. Um, Episodic treatment develops much more fandom, much more community, much more
Yeah.
engagement. So you do a pilot for one of the books and it's very accurate reflection of the book. People like it, and then you have so much more material, to be able to present if they choose to produce not just one but all six of them.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I felt like it was very true to the meat and the heart of the book. Um, and I care very much about my novel, all of them, and I want it to be. It's the worst feeling when you have your book adapted for the screen, and the screen adaptation is nothing like the book.
Mm-hmm.
So this was nothing like that. It was very true to the book.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. And everything that's been adapted for screen, has this all been like episodic or anything feature length?
All of them are pretty much feature length, with the exception of Dissonance.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like,
the ones that have entered into the film festivals are all pretty much feature length. Yeah.
and they're all completed and have been made and shot and everything. Yeah. Amazing.
No, not shot. It's just the screenplay at this point.
Oh, okay. Just the screen. Okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 Because that's what I was curious about, whether you submit the screenplay to the festivals, and that kind of is like casting the net out almost to sort of the relative audience, I suppose. Yeah.
Absolutely, and you would want to choose, like, you would not enter a sci-fi screenplay into a romance film festival, for
Of
example.
course.
There are several Christian film festivals, so my Christian dystopian saga, The End, obviously belongs there. Forecast won the Atlanta After Dark Film Festival's Best Dark Science Fiction Thriller Screenplay category, and so that's a big film festival. And
Yeah.
Forecast is a great book, so that could be, potentially some good exposure.
Definitely, yeah. And I think to get an award for the screenplay before the actual movie is made, that's
Hmm.
incredible. Like, I think that can only really, be a good sign. And then at that point, then is it just a matter of waiting for the right person to come along and be like, right, we want to develop this story, like whether like studio or independent, just whoever kind of has the right vision for it, or well, who can pay for it, really, I suppose, is another kind of way to look at it too.
Yeah, you want to pitch to the executive producers. Well, the good thing is, with The End, for example, that's the one that's won the most awards. Yes, it gives you a track record. It gives you a number of things. One, a listing on IMDb, which is kind of a not a proof of concept, but a and not just bragging rights, but also visibility.
Yeah.
Um, it gives you visibility as the author. It gives the screenplay visibility as a potential um, IP for a studio to take on. And those awards, those little accolades, the wreaths, those laurels that you get are wonderful, and you can use those on any other marketing materials for that or other books to say what
Mhm.
you've won. Um, so it's great. It is great, and if you can show that to a producer and say, hey, this has won an award in a film festival, and then pitch it from there. Yes, that just means so much more to a producer to go, people liked this, people voted on this and chose this.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so, out of all of the books that you've done, are there any more that you think you might put forward, or like, or like reach out to people to sort of develop the screenplay and then kind of take the same, because I'm sure once you get to that position where you've done it, you've had a pilot done, you've got awards. It must be like an addictive feeling where you know you're doing something so well, and it can really be expanded on and the story shared with like a global audience. Like, and I'm not saying it in like a vanity way, but just in the fact that it's sharing a story of something you've created. It's something to be so proud of. Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wouldn't put it outside the realm of possibility to have any one of these other ones behind me adapted, except for the nonfiction ones. Blood Echoes was just released. I may do that one.
mhm.
The Darkness Within is what I'm working on right now, which is a modern day take on Jekyll and Hyde.
Okay.
And Talisman. Talisman is such a broad saga that starts out as a vigilante thriller and ends up an epic space opera in the multiverse. It just absolutely catapults itself into the multiverse. And I had no intention when I wrote the first sentences of Talisman to end up in the multiverse. It was like, I remember just going, oh my gosh, I'm in the multiverse. What am I doing? And it just kind of creeps up on you that way. That's the danger of being a pantser writer, I guess.
For sure. But
So
like when you have like that sort of jump, like that's as enticing as anything to, make someone want to read that, because you can only question how you got there, and that's incredible.
yes, but it also might be hard to categorize. It doesn't play nice or fit into any specific boxes. So it may
Hmm.
not be hard. It may be hard to actually take that and pitch something like that because it's so sweeping. It's almost like Avengers. It's a little bit like Avengers in that
Yeah.
regard. So that worked. But if they want another Avengers, I don't know about that yet. So we'll see.
Yeah,
There
absolutely.
are superheroes in it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, aside from writing, you do voiceover work, but also have done likes of wedding videography, musician, producer, rock and pop artist, much much more. So, I'd like to sort of talk about this like for a little bit. So, obviously, you've always been a creative and a
Mhm.
storyteller, and let's talk about sort of your time in music. Like, how did this come about, and where did it lead you?
Well, I would say that I was an author first. That's very
Hmm.
true. But my skill set just developed into different branches before I
Hmm.
even knew what was happening. And I really loved performing on stage. I really loved making music. I really loved performing it with other people, and it was such a privilege. So I deviated as I do, endearing rabbit trail here, endearing rabbit trail there, and but I think my performing days are either over or close to. No regrets. I did produce like a swan song CD in 2023. um, I've really enjoyed it, and there is a prose that goes into um, songwriting, and there is a prose that goes into storytelling.
Yeah.
So they do mirror each other in certain respects. I just don't. I've never really been comfortable in my own skin on stage performing. I feel like I'm trying to emulate Michael Jackson too much, and I don't have that kind of figure. Not anymore, at least. Not that I ever did, actually. But
I feel you,
but
brother.
I'm most comfortable just behind the scenes, behind
Mm,
the lens. And that makes absolute sense for the name of this podcast. I'm more comfortable behind the lens and creating things, not in secret, but
yeah.
not a lot of like, you know, fanfare and great lights and fans blowing on me in front of people.
Yeah, no, I completely get you, and I think it's good, to have no regrets, like you said, because it's something that you've done, you got as much out of it as you kind of felt that you could, and that's just sort of it's something that you feel is pretty much as right now is kind of good to be shelved. It's like, yeah, I've done it, you know how it makes you feel, and I think that's it is very, very typical of a creative, like having all of these like ideas, things you want to do, and then things that you actually act on doing. And it's funny how it really kind of funnels out down like that. Like, you get to the things that I kind of feel like with that, it gets to the point where the things that you actually do act on are the things that you are more comfortable with than anything else, even if you find that there are times you might not really be, but comfortable enough to want to go ahead and pursue it. You know, and obviously, like, sort of having seen all the different things that, you know, you've done, you know, especially with voice acting too, you know, and that's another kind of thing
Mhm.
where you're still behind the sort of scenes with that. Obviously, your voice is out there, but like everything else, it's like it's so different to having like a role on a stage.
Absolutely. Well, as an author, I can walk through a grocery store and no one knows that I'm Aaron Ryan. No one knows that I'm Aaron Alex for voiceovers. That's part of my name as well, so I use that for voiceovers. And it's funny because I do get the occasional like, your voice sounds very familiar. Um, and rightly so, because I've done gobs and gobs and gobs of different Fortune 500 companies, iterations through TV commercials, radio commercials, web commercials, explainer videos, e-learning, character and animation, audiobooks, a lot of different genres. I've and a lot of different companies I've represented in several decades worth of voiceover
Yeah.
work. So it's a huge privilege, but I really do love the anonymity of it. Like, you're walking around, no one knows it's me. Um, it was so funny. Um, oh gosh, one time I can't remember where we were going. We were going on vacation, my family and I, and the rental car place. I'm sorry, the car parking place where we were going to leave our van was full. Even though I had booked it, it was full when we got there. And like, wait, what? So we had to scramble, and we found a different car parking place next door to it. I pulled in. I said, "Let me check these guys and see if they have availability." I walked in. I'm like, "Hey, these guys closed, and I don't know what happened. And can we park here?" Yes. Got to fill out this paperwork. Okay. Start doing it, and I'm going. And I look up at the TV that's suspended on the wall, and they're playing like a United Healthcare commercial, and it's me. and I'm going, holy cow, that's me. Like,
Oh,
the guy goes, what do you mean? And I said, I'm a voice actor. That's my voice in that commercial. And he goes, oh wow, and
oh,
he could
amazing.
tell, because I sound like me. But oh, it was crazy. But you're in the wild, and just no one knows when your stuff's going to
Yeah.
be playing in the wild, and it's fun.
That's incredible. What are the chances of something like that happening as well? Like, that's
We
incredible.
weren't even supposed to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah, like, I love that. And yeah, well, yeah, because that's the thing when when you're in more of a written and spoken role, there is that. Like, I mean, obviously, like, you know, we're on camera right now, you know, but in terms of the percentage of people who watch versus listen podcasts in general, contentious. I don't know the exact figures, but like it's. I mean, that's the sort of thing. That's like, you know, when you have that, you have your work out there and people know about it, but having that sort of being able to walk down the street and just be like, yeah, I do this and no one knows it. No one knows it's me and it's great.
Yeah, you're like a ninja celebrity, I
Oh
guess.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Although I have to say, like, I've had out of all over 100 episodes of this podcast I've produced, and I've I've never been recognized by anybody for it, right, which is fine and to be expected. But one of my closest friends, who was on the show in the very early days, has actually been recognized by somebody for being on this podcast, which to
Oh
me
wow.
is the most mind blowing thing. Now, it was in a sort of situation where it's not the most like, you know, it's not the craziest thing in the world. Like it was at my wedding and he was seated by a colleague of mine and he's like, I know you. Where do I know you from somewhere? And he's like, I know you from Andy's podcast. It's just the funniest thing for like one episode out of God, like what'll be, I think, 115 or something at this point. By the time this release, I'm not too sure, but yeah, it's.
That's crazy.
I know it is. It is hilarious.
But how cool! How cool that is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it does make me kind of feel like I might. I think I'd like it to happen at some point, but I mean, I'm also happy for it to not. You know, I mean, the surprise you get from people when they find out
Yeah.
is kind of, it's quite nice as well. I
Yeah.
do actually I actually do need to ask though about so if you're doing like a you say like a United Healthcare commercial, right? Now, from all the American TV I have watched in my life, especially for adverts to do with medicine, there is the
Mhm.
very very quick lines of like say like particular like side effects, what the side effects are, and if you're feeling anything
Yeah.
bad, really 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 fast. Is that
Yep.
something that you've ever had to do? And
Yeah. Yeah.
how do you do
Auctioneer
it?
you just learn to talk really fast. Some assembly require batteries not included. Blah blah blah. And it does require, many of them require several takes, and that's okay. Um, but I think overall, it's just a matter of like learning how to speak really fast, and
Yeah.
you have the luxury of being able to do multiple takes. Uh, from your director, if you do directed sessions. So. Um, Yeah, it's nothing too like, oh man, it's so hard to do that. Nothing like that. It just takes some practice.
No, that's fair. That's fair because that's something I've always been curious about. Because like, see, in the UK, like, we don't really have that. Like everything's a lot slower here. Like
Yeah.
all of like the voiceover adverts, a lot slower. I don't know why it may be, but it just is. But so obviously doing a lot of voice work takes on so many different mediums. You have, like you mentioned, audiobooks, and of course then there's like you got commercials, voiceover work for voiceover work takes on like I say every medium possible actually. But what are like some of the differences between like say it's just if you're doing a commercial, there are times it's probably just you and the director, I'm sure, and like other obviously producers and stuff, but you're the only person sort of being recorded versus other projects where like say if you're doing for TV, you might have other people. What are some of like the
Yeah.
more distinct differences of doing like solo work versus work with other cast for voice work?
Well, it's very rare, very, very, very rare. Well, where I'll do anything on a like a joint session with anyone. It's usually just, and I think they prefer it that way too. They like
Okay.
to record one person at a time, not to do a um what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's not a symphony of
Mm-hmm.
people. Um, I mostly work alone. I mean, I'm going to record a whole bunch of auditions, send them out as a batch, and then I'll get a job. When I get a job, I'll run in and record that. And 9 times out of 10, it's recorded on my own,
Okay.
not a directed session. All of the work for United Healthcare, that's union work. And there's high stakes, attached to those commercials. And so they want someone dependable, but they want someone directable.
Yeah.
So they want someone that they can say, okay, now say it this way, or let's put an extra emphasis on this syllable right here, or you mispronounce this city name, whatever. Um, or there's just a lot to record, as in the case of United Healthcare, because it goes everywhere, and there's all kinds of
Yeah.
tags for each city that they're going to air it in, these specific, city tags. So it's never really. I've done a few sessions where there's a few talent on the line, but it's just so rare. It's a it's a lonely hermit career, man. Just like authoring.
No, of course, of course. That's really interesting. Like, so do you then, if you like, say you're doing like a job for United Healthcare, would you do everything out of your own studio, or do you have to go
Yeah.
to? So you do everything and just send it to them? Yeah.
Yeah, and it really behooves you to have your own studio at home,
Yeah.
because otherwise you're dependent on another studio to be available anytime you need to do auditions,
Okay.
anytime you need to record the job. And this is an act now while supplies last kind of career. So you really do have to have a studio available to you in order to run in there, do an audition. Just this morning, one of my agents, I've got four different voiceover agents. One of my agents, I recorded something and I said something incorrect. And they want to submit it to their client, but they can't as is because I botched a line.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go back in and record that change and then send them the revised file. Well, if I'm dependent on a studio that I have to drive to and check their availability and do they have any rooms and I have to pay for that time, you're not going to go anywhere in voiceovers. You do need a home studio. Um, but beyond that, there's different technologies. I use a technology called Source Connect. And Source Connect is very industry standard technology for being able to let your clients listen in real time to what you're recording and receive the files in real time
Okay.
for what you've recorded. So it gives them the opportunity to get them, right away. To not like, hey, can you send this to me as soon as possible after the session because we're going to need it. Um, it's all, they get it right away.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, but you have to invest. It's an investment in your career for sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. But like, obviously, it's something that pays off in the long term, especially if it's more likely to guarantee you work over somebody who doesn't have those kinds of means. And but that's interesting because I never knew that it was well a job that's almost like self funded in terms of what you're doing with your own resources. Because I would have always thought that with these types of companies, it was something that they might have provided or anything like that. Like, but then I suppose then you're kind of looking more into sort of a studio for like TV work at that point, really, I'd imagine, rather than just something that's going to be on TV for 60 seconds. Where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, of course. And
Yep.
like, do you have a favorite type of voice work that you
I
do?
do.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big, I just don't do a lot of a lot of character and animation stuff like video
Okay.
games and things like that. They're fun depending on the role, but they can be very taxing depending on the
Mm,
role. And my bread and butter largely comes from, commercial and e-learning work. And so if I've thrashed my voice in a character animation session, then I won't be able to do any auditions for commercial or e-learning, nor will I be able to record any jobs for commercial or e-learning for a while until my voice is recovered. So some people love that. And I also don't love doing audiobooks. I will record my own. So I've got several of my
yeah.
my books behind me and I've recorded those books. um, I hate doing audiobooks. They take way too long and they pay way too little, but only I know how my story is supposed to sound.
Yeah.
Only I know how my characters are supposed to sound. And when a character dies, oh, that's me bawling because that's my child. Um,
Yeah.
I birthed, that character, and to then have to kill him off, it's so sadistic, but it is like no one is going to cry when a beloved character dies like I will because that's my child.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this is actually something that I've spoke to a lot of authors while I've been doing this, and it's something that comes up every single time, and especially those with like fictional series. It's you yourself as the writer will get so immersed into the characters as such because, like you say, you've created the characters, you are fully responsible for the characters, and how hard is it to just let go of a character like one whenever they have to kind of be written off and killed off in the storyline, but also
Yeah.
when the series itself is completely
Yeah.
finished and then everyone's story is all wrapped up. Like either way, it's got to be tough.
It's tough and it's also impossible, I think.
Yeah,
Um, you end up loving your characters, you end up loving the story. I have the actual birthdays for several of my beloved fictional characters in my real life calendar.
I love that.
In fact, this past Monday was my birthday,
Ah,
and
birthday.
one of the characters, thank you, one of the characters who appears in Dissonance and then is the protagonist of the Talisman series, I gave him the same birthday. So I get to share a birthday with somebody who saves the universe.
Yeah,
Um, it's really awesome that way, and you do that for like that's part of the character development, but so that you'll remember them a little bit better. And cherished people in my life, like my wife and sons, their birthdays are given to beloved characters as well. Their names are given
Mhm.
to beloved characters as well. The line between fiction and reality really comes becomes blurred
Mhm.
as an author.
Oh, yeah.
And when the series is over, it's excruciating. It is excruciating because I know they exist somewhere, and I want them to continue to exist.
Yeah. That yeah, like I can only imagine that, like, when you're writing something that comes to an end like that, you become more of a fan than the actual writer, because as a fan, like, of media, written or on screen, you get a good franchise, a good series, you always want more. You always want to see more, like, in
Yeah.
terms of, no matter how mundane it may seem, you always kind of want more in some way. But I only imagine, as a writer, you kind of get that same thing, even though it's entirely down to you to kind of make that happen. But it's just where, it just almost can't, in a sense. Or, well, I say can't, but just, it might just be best left untouched where it is.
Yeah, it's just a balancing act. The whole thing is a
Yeah.
balancing act, all of it, because you just um, the character, the story is one thing, and you fall in love with the story, and that's why you write the story, because you want other people to experience it as well. But the characters are your children. I mean,
Mm,
there's really no other way to say it than that's the truth. The characters become your children, and they become your wife and your grandparents and your best friends, and they exist, and you want them to continue existing. I'll say it
yeah.
again.
Of course, yeah, I understand, and just, you made a point about doing your own voiceover work for the audiobooks, because it keeps that sort of reality, in terms of, because it's your story, it's better done in your own voice. And,
Yeah.
like, this is something that has, like, really, I've heard a lot of from a lot of different people, because I know there are so many people who are happy enough to outsource that, and then there are others who are just like, well, no, like, and this goes for fiction and nonfiction, but they're just very
Mhm.
much like, well, I'm not the best speaker. I'm a better writer than I
Yeah.
am speaker, and but, like, do you think it's more important for, like, authors to do their own voiceover work, like, for audiobooks, regardless of genre, or regardless of fiction or nonfiction, I should say, just because it really emphasizes the story in their own voice?
Well, so we were just talking about this in the Authors Guild today. I'm an Authors Guild member, very proud to be a member of the Authors Guild. But if you are like a terrible speaker, or you have imposter syndrome, or you're going to be nervous the entire time, and you really don't think you can bring it to life as good as you want to, then by all means outsource it to a respected professional voiceover
Mm-hmm.
artist, a professional narrator. You're going to do your audience a favor. You're going to do your your book a favor that way. And it does it a disservice when you are trying to do something that is just really not in your wheelhouse. If your wheelhouse is writing, write. Don't try to be an audiobook narrator if that's not in you,
Mm-hmm.
because no one's going to like it.
Yeah.
And they may even leave like a negative review, which is just the very worst possible outcome.
Oh God, yeah,
So,
yeah. I can
and
only
there's tons of
imagine.
them out there that are just they do a wonderful job. Wonderful job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, it's something, like, on, like, a personal level for me, that I've been juggling it myself. I released a book in March, like a nonfiction memoir about the podcast and my journey. People have asked for audiobook, and I'm like, I'm an okay speaker, because obviously I wouldn't be doing this, but, like, it's kind of like, well, I think the end product, and, like, everything you just said there, the matter of the end product being up to scratch and of the particular quality, that's the sort of, like, and is that, like, a common roadblock that you would find, like, with other people in that sort of same situation?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. But you have to the book is the book, and you have to serve the book.
yeah.
So it can't be a pride issue. It can't be an ego, like, oh, I think I can do this, and it'd be fine. If you aren't convinced that this is what you should be doing, it's kind of like I love that line from Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Yeah.
And that's so true. It might be that you shouldn't be doing this audiobook. You might think you can do it, but that doesn't mean that you should do it.
Of course, it's a very good point. Like, like as I say, people have asked me, like, and I think it's to do with more people kind of are, that's how they're absorbing books these days. More people are, or taking in audiobooks or on an electronic screen, totally fair. And for me though, like I like, I know nothing about it. Like, because for me, it's like, even if when I'm doing like the intros to all of my episodes, I'm kind of like, I want it to sound as natural as possible, but then it gets to the point where, you're reading off your notes and it's very obvious. And I'm kind of like, well, this is okay, but also very inconsistent, and it's just kind of like, I mean, yeah, it's, I don't know. It's very, it is such an interesting thing, and voiceover work in general, because like it's sort of of the emphasis it adds on to what it is, like what it is you're sort of providing the voice work for. Like, it is such a powerful tool, and I think it's a great means of storytelling, like in general.
It is. Well, I'm a guy who really believes there is no one size fits all.
Mhm.
So I've got Kindle versions, paperback,
Yeah.
hardcover, and Audible. Of the paperback versions, I've got paperback and then paperback box set, and then I've got paperback all in one for a
Yeah.
series. So 3 books in one paperback box set, 3 books in one hardcover. I've got the individual audiobooks and then the all-in-one audiobook of those individual books. Because, when people see an audiobook for Dissonance, for example, the Alien Invasion saga, they're going to see like volume one is 8 hours, and volume two is, 7 hours, and volume three is 10 hours, whatever. But if they look and they see the all-in-one Dissonance audiobook is 51 hours,
Yeah.
I didn't have to make that one, but that's one of my best sellers. The End is a Christian dystopian saga, and I've got 3 books. They could buy them individually, but my bestseller in audiobooks by far is The End. All 3 books, all the whole trilogy in one audiobook, and it's like 26 hours.
Yeah.
So for the guys who drive trucks,
Yeah.
and they want a good, long saga to dive into, you've just you gave them the sweet spot for that one. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, of course. And like, I think that shows there's definitely a medium out there for everybody. Like, there is a
Yep.
way for everybody to absorb the story that it is you're trying to tell, which is incredible. But Aaron, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera podcast. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an amazing conversation. I would just like to give you the floor before we wrap up. Where can our listeners find you and your work?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I love this question. Um, there's 2 different places. So one is authoraaronryan.com. That has all the links to all the sub sites for the different series. It has all the socials at the bottom. But then the other site is authoraaronryangroup.com. And Author Aaron Ryan Group it'll forward you to a Facebook group where you can find giveaways, discount codes, news on the screenplays and their status, upcoming appearances, blah, blah, blah. No scammers, no spammers. And then for authors, I put in videos there that are tips and encouragement and affirmation. And so if you're an author, join that group and you'll find encouragement and videos there to kind of spur you on. So authoraaronryan.com, authoraaronryangroup.com.
Amazing stuff. Yes, definitely. Be sure to check out all of that there from Aaron. That is amazing stuff. Once again, thank you very much for your time. Been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And there you have it for episode 116 of Behind the Camera. Massive thank you to Aaron Ryan for being today's guest, and be sure to check out his works. The links to this are all in the description of this episode. As always, thank you to all patrons for your support. You're all truly appreciated. And of course, if you would like to stay connected with Behind the Camera, check out my link tree in the description for all socials and my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. Thank you for listening, for the support, and for being part of the journey. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.